The Estes Yankee, another one of Estes's most iconic rockets that's been around for what seems like forever. Although the building of it is about the same as any other 18mm BT-20 design, its unique nose cone and fin design definitely sets it apart from the others. The Yankee made its debut in the Estes 1982 catalog. It sported a different and unique paint scheme than the modern version, which came out in 1993. The only structural difference between the original and the modern design is the introduction of a plastic nose cone. Although Estes did not officially recognize the plastic nose cone until 1994, it stands to reason that it probably was introduced in 1993 at the same time as the new color scheme. The modern Yankee utilizes adhesive back stickers, which may be easier for younger modelers. They are thicker and cannot be slid into position as easy as the original water slide decals did. In this build, I'll be sporting the original retro paint scheme, however I'll be using a plastic nose cone, an engine baffle, and an engine hook to make it more flyable and durable. Sit back and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, this is Kevin and welcome to part 2 in my series on building the vintage Yankee. This is the vintage Yankee that I built in the last video, and the reason for the part 2 is I want to build the same rocket to look the same but to be my flying version. Although this is flyable, I really don't want to. It's too pretty to fly. It's pristine, it's mint. It actually is paired up with this one right here. This is my modern version of the Yankee that I'll probably never fly, but it was made to go on the shelf just like this one. If I do want to fly a modern Yankee, I've got this one right here. This is the one you've seen me build, rebuild yet again. I've retrofitted this one. This is the one that I added the engine hook and the internal baffle in the inside. So again, you've seen this one quite a bit. You've seen it fly quite a bit. So I don't really ever need to fly this one because I've got this one. However, I want to fly something that looks like this without damaging this one. So that's the purpose of this video. I'm going to build another vintage Yankee, but I'm going to implement an engine baffle, an engine hook, and I'm going to step aside from the balsa nose cone and use a modern plastic one. The shape is the same. I just want something a little more durable to handle the terrain that I fly in on landings. So this I think will last a little longer and hold up better than the balsa. So now that I've shown everything on the screen here, oh wait, there's one thing I haven't shown, and you're probably wondering, what on earth is this? Well, this is something I wanted to highlight in this intro. This is a custom-made 100% plastic PLA 3D printed Yankee that my buddy Joe from JC Hobbies made for me. Joe's the one that's been in my videos. In fact, I've been in his videos and vice versa, but he comes out here every so often and flies in the desert with me. And this last time he came back in December, he gifted me with this 100% 3D printed Yankee. He built two, one for myself and one for him, and he flew it when he was out here, and hopefully you've seen the video of it fly. And I'm tempted to fly this one. I just don't know if I should because it looks so pretty on display with the other ones. I'm a little nervous, especially with, again, the terrain that I fly off of. But I just wanted to show this off to you. A couple things that he did, which is pretty cool, is he implemented two launch lugs, but he integrated them into the build of the body tube. In other words, he didn't print them up and glue them on later. They were printed as part of the body tube. So that's pretty cool. Also, he built up a payload bay up in the nose, which is detachable. But if you want to run an altimeter or any little onboard payloads, you can utilize that payload bay. He also has the nose cone separate. So if you want to eliminate the payload bay, you can just skip it and put the nose cone right on top of the body tube. But it's got pre-drilled holes for altimeter venting. It's a cool little 18mm plastic Yankee. So again, I just wanted to highlight that as part of my Yankee collection. Thank you again, Joe. That is just too cool. It looks great on the shelf with the other ones. So now you've seen all the Yankees that I've got in my collection, and I'm going to set these aside for the purpose of showing you what's to come. I'm going to convert this into that using all this stuff, and we're going to have some fun flying it. I've also already got the balsa fins pre-cut out of 16th inch balsa, and I'm going to paper them just like I did before. And like I said, most of the building will be the same with the exception of installing the extra two parts, the engine hook and the baffle. So without any further ado, let me clear all this stuff off. We'll get the tools ready to go, and we're going to start building this. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and make the marks on the body tube for where we're going to put our fins and our launch lug. So I like to use this little Estes fin marking guide, which is a great little tool to have. And it's pretty simple and straightforward. You just, the three notches that you see on the base that correspond to where the fins are going to go, you just make your little notches in line with those marks. This one here is going to be the launch lug and our third fin. Okay, so once you get those notches made, then I take my other favorite tool from Estes, this line marking guide, and just line up the mark on the guide and draw your lines. Just like that. The launch lug line, I'm going to extend that one up just a little bit further. There, just so we'll have a reference line when we glue it on. So now that we've got that drawn on, we definitely know which is the aft end. Now before I glue the engine block in, I want to get the baffle installed. But before we glue it in, obviously I need to attach my shock cord, which I'm going to use in this case some 100-pound Kevlar. And I'll figure out the length after I get it installed, but I'm just going to wrap it through the eye hook and tie a double knot. Now this is a baffle that I get from Rocketarium. Their baffles are very good quality. In fact, this is the same baffle that I've got on my other Yankee that I'm flying, the modern version of it. So there we go. Tie that, and before I glue it into the tube, let's go ahead and cut this little tail off a little bit. And I'm going to also add just a drop of thin CA to keep it from fraying. Like so, and then also a little dab on the knot. It can kind of seep in, and that'll keep it from ever wanting to open up on us. Okay, so again, just regular thin CA glue. And let me give it a quick spurt, just a kicker, so I don't accidentally glue my fingers to it. Okay, so we've got that installed. Now I need to figure out where I'm going to place the baffle in the tube. Now, one thing I do know is the length of the motor and where we're going to install the engine block. And that's going to install at the end of this spacer, which is right there. Now I want to put the baffle at least 1/2 inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch ahead of it. So that being said, let me mark a 1/2 inch ahead. Right there. Now I'd love to give a full inch gap, but when you start doing that, you're encroaching upon your parachute space. So I really want to leave some space for the parachute. Okay. Now I've got the baseline for that. Let me mark the top of where the baffle's going to go. So that's how much space I'm going to have for a parachute. Again, not a lot of space, but it's one of those things where you say it is what it is, because you just gotta, there's really nothing else you can do about it. Obviously I won't be putting a 15, 18, 24 inch parachute I might be limited to a 9-inch, but this thing is so light that it'll land just fine on a 9-inch. So now I'm gonna have to put some glue down in here, but the question is, how deep do I put the glue? So now that I've got a mark as to where the baffle is gonna go, I'm gonna take a dowel and I want to mark a couple of places on here. One, I'm going to put a line as to where I'm going to push the baffle down to. So that's as far as I'm going to push the baffle down into the slot. Now for the glue, I could actually put a little bit of glue in from the back side and the front side. So let's measure. The back side is going to be, actually I'm going to use the same length, because there's only a 1/4 inch difference. So I'm going to use the same location on that. Now I obviously need to cut the shock cord. No, I don't. I can still leave it out for the time being. Because I'm going to push the baffle in from the front. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't want to drag glue through the backside where the motor is going to go. So let me get some wood glue. Put it on the dowel. And again, I'm going to do the backside first. Okay, got it at that line that we made. Okay, I can feel we got full coverage. Try not to touch the sides at all, which we succeeded at there. Put some more glue on. This is going to go in the front. Okay, I can feel full coverage there. That's good. Okay, again, careful not to touch the sides. Grab the paper towel, clean off my dowel, so then I can insert the baffle from the front, and I'm going to push it down to that line that we drew. And you know what? It's not going to fit, so I'm going to have to push the hook. So let me add 3/4 inch to that. I got to do this quickly before the glue sets. So let me add a 3/4 inch to it. There. Now I can just push the hook. To the line and stop. Okay, so now the baffle is glued in. The dimension should be right on where we marked. In fact, let me verify by our new line that I drew. That's actually not correct. I should have taken 3/4 inch off, not added to it. There we go. Okay. The glue held out just long enough to get that job done. All right. Whew, that was a close one. That's called thinking on the fly. But okay, that was almost disastrous there, but you saw me salvage it. But we got it in the right place. Yeah, I should have subtracted 3/4 inch instead of add to it. But there we go. So now the baffle's in the right spot. So now we can go ahead and glue the engine. A little bit of glue here, I want to clean that out. Before it dries on me. Okay, so now we want to go ahead and glue the engine hook in, or the engine block, I'm sorry. And I'm going to use my little spacing guide that I made. I just simply ran a toothpick at the 1/4 inch mark. So I push this in until the toothpick hits, and then we know we got the right distance. Okay, and I've also in the past know that the full length of a Q-tip is the right distance for the glue setup. So let me go ahead and lay some glue up in there for the engine block. And the only other modification I'm going to be making is to adding an engine hook. And we're going to have to measure again where that engine block is, so I can ensure that the engine hook is right up against that block. Okay, there we go. Okay, take our thrust ring or engine block, same thing. Get it started. Take my spacer, push it to that till it stops at the toothpicks, and pull it right back out. Okay, that's really all there is to it. We've got now the baffle and the engine block installed in the body tube. So let's see how far I think I'm going to need to run this shock cord. Now, in addition to the Kevlar, we're also going to run some elastic too. So I don't need to make this too terribly long on the Kevlar, but I want to leave enough room for a loop. So let me go ahead and tie off a loop here. Let's see how far. We'll make it a few inches out. Just tie a loop upon itself. That knot didn't go as planned. Let me try that one again. There we go. So there's the loop that we can glue or tie our rubber shock cord onto eventually. Okay, so I can snip that off. Okay, and just like before, take a little bit of thin CA glue, dab it on the end so it doesn't fray on us, and a little bit on the knot too. Okay, and I'll give that a squirt of kicker. And there we have it. So, okay, so I'm going to let this set aside so we can allow the baffle and the engine block to dry up thoroughly. And then we can start papering the fins. Before we begin papering the fins, I do want to show you one additional step I took on the body tube. One thing I forgot to do when I made the markings on the tube for the fins and the launch lug, I needed to make a mark as well for where we're going to put the engine hook. And I spaced it exactly between two fins, just like the launch lug. So, for example, this line right here is where it's going to go. And I'll measure it later and we'll cut our slot to install it. But I just wanted to show you that I did make a mark for the engine hook. So, again, I've still got the baffle and the engine block drawing inside, so I still want to leave that set aside for now. One other thing I did off camera was I went ahead and marked all these fins, maybe 1/16 of an inch or so up from the root. I just made a line with pencil on both sides of all the fins. That way I'll have a line to glue up the paper up to. I don't want to glue the paper all the way up to the root because I want to leave some for the fillet to adhere to the wood. But as you've seen me do before, I just take a simple piece of plain copy paper, fold it in half, and you can just use one fin for this. Take a fin and put it up against your little line there for overhang, and then just go ahead and draw a very rough line around it. Make another one here. And one final one here. That's going to be kind of close, actually. You know what? I'm going to remark it. I drew a little bit too big there, and I didn't leave enough overhang for the third one. So let's try this again. Okay. There we go. That one's going to fit nicely. And I just cut that out. Again, it can be rough. Just as long as you have enough paper to completely cover the wood, you're good. And the reason I fold the paper over in half is because it gives me 2 cuts for the price of 1. No reason to mark six fin sides when all you have to do is mark and cut 3 and get 6 out of the deal. There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to do one for the sake of the filming on camera, and then I'm going to do the remainder of the, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to glue one fin half on, and then put it under the weight, which I have right here next to me. And then I'll do the other 2 fins the same, and then after an hour or so, I'm going to take it out and flip it over and trim the excess off, and then just recover the other side. That's basically what I'm going to do. But for now, I'm just going to show you how I do the one side. Again, very simple process. A little wood glue and a popsicle stick. Spread the glue up to that line, but not over it, as best you can. Okay, and then just wipe it off. And then spread it out the other side. Again, this doesn't have to be a perfect science, but you really do want to eliminate as much glue as you can to make it a thin sheen. So you don't get wrinkles in the paper. Okay, just like that. Lay this up against that line you drew. Press it down. Make sure you're fully covered, as we are there. And go ahead and take your 2 halves, which I use 2 1/4-inch plywood plates. Lay it in there, sandwich it in, and then I just use this ammo can to sandwich it in. So I'm going to do the other 2 fins the same way, and then after an hour, I'm going to pull them out, trim the sides, and then adhere paper to the other side. And then we'll catch up with you then. Okay, while we still have the paper drying on the fins, this gives us a good opportunity to go ahead and cut our slot for the engine hook. And the way I'm going to do that is, since I've already got one of these lines marked as H for hook, which is right that one right there, what I want to do is I want to use my spacer as a point of reference as to the distance down that line we need to make our slit. So let me hold that toothpick up against the back end of the tube and just make a line, and that indicates right where our engine block begins. So if I cut my slot just on the aft side of it, that's going to drop the hook in right in front of the engine hook, or the engine mount, sorry. So one thing I kind of failed to do was I didn't draw my line long enough, so let me just extend this out just a little bit further to the notch that we just made. There. So now I'm going to take an X-Acto knife and just make a small, well, about 1/8 of an inch slit just on the aft side of that mark. And if I feel resistance, that's the engine hook, or the engine mount, so I need to back up just a little bit more. There, right there, it's going in. Just like so. Let's see if that's wide enough. There it goes. So now we are right up against the engine mount, and we're right centered over that line that we made. And eventually that's going to get glued in. And what I'm going to do also is, after the two fins on this side are glued on, I'm going to take some remainder scrap spacer tube that I've got, and I'm going to cut out just enough of this tubing to fit between the two fins, and that's going to cover up the hook. And we're going to have that, I'm going to measure actually 1 inch up from the bottom of the tube, and that's where this is going to get mounted at. But we'll do that later once we get the fins glued on. But there we have it. We've got the slot made for the engine hook. Okay, several hours have now passed, and the paper should be drying on the fin. So let me remove my weight, open up my plywood sheets to reveal the papered fins. And what I did off camera was, when I applied paper to the first side, I already took it out and trimmed those sides off, and then I glued on the other side. So that's why you're probably like, where'd that other side come from? I did it off camera. So now we can set all this aside. And I'm just going to do one at a time for an example for you, and I'll do the other two off camera. But let me take one fin, let me trim the sides off just like I did the other side. Just kind of running the knife along the edge of the fin itself as a guide. Nice, smooth, easy cuts. Just like so. And now I've got one fully sheeted fin. Now I do want to seal the edges, so let me go ahead and grab some thin CA glue. I'm going to seal the edges, let that dry, and then I'm going to sand them and get the right curvature in the leading edge. And then they'll be ready to glue onto the body. But let me grab some glue. Okay. And again, you want to glue 3 sides, but you don't want to glue the root edge, because that needs to remain porous, so it'll adhere better to the body. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit and dry, and yeah, looks really good. In fact, this thin CA it's starting to get a little older, so it's thickening up a little bit, so it's not running like the other, like a brand new bottle would. But I think that's okay, because it's really creating a good seal at the edge where the paper meets the wood. So yeah, I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back to you and we're going to do some sanding and preparation for gluing onto the body. Okay, just to get you caught up to speed here, after all 3 fins dried with the CA glue on the 3 perimeter edges, I did go ahead and sand those down with some 220 on a sanding block. And then I very slightly rounded the leading edge, just a little bit to give it a little bit more aerodynamics to it, but I didn't want to overdo it. And then on 2 of the 3 fins, I've already glued them on, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how I did that with this 3rd and final fin. So what I simply do is just take my wood glue and run it down the root edge. Remember, this is the edge that we did not seal with CA glue, and it was for this purpose. So we get good absorption of the glue into the wood fibers, and kind of want to spread it out, make sure we get full coverage. Use your finger if you need to wipe a little off. And then using the line that we drew, I'm just going to set the fin on that line, lay it down, press it, and immediately remove it. Now we're going to let this sit for about 30 seconds to a minute, so the glue can kind of harden up and tack tack up on us, so when I put it back down, it'll hold its position. And you can see, like for example, on this fin down here at the root edge, there's about that 1/16 inch gap there. That's what's going to allow our fillets to adhere nicely to the wood and the body tube. One other thing I did do off camera was I took just a little strip of sandpaper, and I just gently, lightly sanded the area on the tube where the fins are going to glue down. I also did a little bit up here where the launch lug is going to glue as well. I didn't go hard enough to take actually the pencil marks off, but I did kind of take that sheen off the tube ever so slightly. So, okay, now it's been close to a minute now. We can go ahead and lay this fin in permanently. So I'm going to lay it back down on the line, drop it into position, see how it'll hold, look from behind, align everything. Okay, looks good right there. I'm going to press firmly into the tube. Verify once again everything looks good, everything's perpendicular. There's a view. Hopefully it's coming up right. You can see the angles. All three angles are equal, and all three fins are perpendicular to the body. So now, the hardest part of modeling, and I've said this before, and I believe it to be true, we have to just be patient and wait while the glue completely dries. And then, before we do our fillets, we are going to work on installing the engine hook and laying in a thin BT20 wrapper to cover the hook and to keep it anchored down. But again, we'll deal with that after the glue dries on the fins. I don't want to mess with this too much right now. So we'll come back after this dries. Okay, now that all three fins are dried on the body tube, it is time to glue in our engine hook and our engine hook cover. I want to do that before I lay in the fillets. That way I can fillet over the cover that we're installing right now. Now what I did was I wanted to allow 1.5 inches from the end of the engine tube, where the engine casing is going to be, to the point where it can pivot up and down. So I measured 1.5 inches from that point to the front end, made a little notch there, and then from that notch to the leading edge of the fins was exactly 1/2 inch. So I cut this BT20 to fit 1/2 inch long, and it's cut longitudinally to fit directly between two fins, just like so. So I'm going to line it up to that mark that I made, and it'll match up evenly on the front end of the fin. We're going to glue the hook into the leading edge with wood glue, and then we're actually going to glue this cover on with thick CA. And the reason I want to use thick CA is there's really no good way to press down on this if I used epoxy or wood glue. So I want immediate adhesion with the CA and kicker, so I can firmly press it down and it'll hold its position. The CA it's plenty strong enough to adhere the cardboard to cardboard. I did roughen up the body tube with some sandpaper, and the inside of this is open cardboard itself, so it should soak in nicely and make a nice strong bond. So let me take the hook out. Okay, I'm going to get some wood glue and just put a little dab right on the slot that we cut earlier. That way the hook will actually kind of push the glue in and kind of help seal that gap. Okay, it's in. I'm going to let that sit for just a second while I wipe off excess glue. Okay, make sure we're aligned, and now I want to lay down some thick CA. On either side of the hook. Take it up to the base of the fin. Just like so. Make sure our hook is still straight in alignment. It is. Now I'm actually going to spray some of the kicker on our cover so it'll immediately bond. We don't want it to move around on us. So I'm going to drop this in right where it needs to be. Right there, and press down. Make sure the hook is still where it needs to be. Okay. Just gonna press that in, and voila, we are done. Okay, that's gonna hold permanently now. Now we're ready to go ahead and lay down the fillets. And I'm actually going to fillet the leading edge of that cover, as well as the back half, just to kind of smooth out and even out the transition. And also run a little bit of the epoxy that we use for the fillets around the engine hook, just to sort of conform it to the body tube a little bit better. So there, the engine hook is now firmly attached, and we're ready to fill it. Okay, I'm mixing up my rock epoxy here, and I'm just preparing to do the fillets. And in addition to doing the fillets, I'm also going to use the epoxy to help transition the engine hook and the engine hook cover to flow and blend more into the body tube itself, so it doesn't stand out as obvious as it does. So I'm just about done getting this mixed up. We have about 15 to 20 minutes of good working time with this. It'll take overnight to fully harden and cure, but it starts to thicken up at about 20 minutes, so you want to get it laid up prior to that. And I'll also use a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in certain places to help the epoxy flow a little better and smoother, especially around the engine hook and the engine hook cover. I think that'll really help out. Okay, so now that that is fully blended, let's take our rocket and let's do the side with the engine hook first, just to get it out of the way. So I'm going to take some epoxy here, lay it in the joint, and a lot of this is going to be basically scooped up with the other popsicle stick, and then we'll just, whatever comes off, we'll just transition to the next one. Okay, one smooth stroke here. Okay, and well, like I said, we're going to add this to this side. Okay, nice. Okay, we'll add a little bit more. Okay, and then we'll just lay on the other side. Okay, well, I'm going to get a Q-tip and some alcohol, and I'm going to clean this up, and I'll probably do the rest off camera. But you get the idea of how I lay these down. There, just use some alcohol on a Q-tip to help pull up the epoxy. Like so. Okay, there we go. I'll just continue to the rest off camera, and we'll check back in when I'm done. Okay, all the fillets are done. If you look closely, you can see the beige color that's in the crevice of each joint there. I got the rock epoxy in there, and especially around the engine hook, you can see where I kind of gently rounded it around the hook, kind of smoothed and evened that out, making the transitions a little bit smoother. So it's still a little wet, so I'm going to try not to touch it, but it's holding its shape. That's the nice thing about rock epoxy, is it's so thick it doesn't run on you. So yeah, we're going to let that dry, but in the meantime we can go ahead and glue our engine hook on, and that's a simple process of taking some wood glue, and I've already made a mark on the engine, the launch lug line, 1.5 inches up from the base. So from the aft end there, 1.5 inch, 1.5 inch up. Made a little mark, and I'm just going to set it right on that point there. So pretty easy. I've already sanded that off. So I'm just going to run a thin bead of wood glue. Okay. Set that right at the mark we made and lay it down. And the nice thing about it is it's so lightweight, it'll hold its position, so you don't have to take it off and wait for it to tack up on you. So go ahead and align it, look down kind of like a rifle scope. Make sure everything's in alignment. Okay, looks good. And like I said, I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'm gonna put down some fillets later once all this dries up on us. So there we have it. We are making progress. Okay, now I'm just mixing up some rock epoxy, very little bit here, just enough to cover our launch lug fillets. The fin fillets and the engine hook fillets have glued overnight, and they're completely cured. And I did go ahead and give time for the wood glue to set up on the launch lug as well, so now it won't move around on us as we try to lay down the fillets. And the only other thing I did too is, you could probably already see the blue tape. I went ahead and masked off the front and back sides, so when I run the fillet, any excess that's dragged off will end up on the tape, not on the rocket body, which will make cleanup a lot easier. So the rock epoxy is already mixed up well enough. Let me scoop up some here, and we'll just kind of drop it in to the fillet, and then have some Q-tips and rubbing alcohol on hand so you can do a quick cleanup. Okay. I'm going to take a clean popsicle stick here. One smooth motion. I'm actually going to bring it back this way. Looks like we might be getting a little bit of an air bubble in the middle. So I'm just going to kind of work that out there. Okay, and then just re-drag again. Beautiful. All right, then we've got some excess here. I can lay that into the joint there. A little bit more rock epoxy. And help push it up into that crevice up in there. Okay. Take our popsicle stick here. And drag. Perfect. Okay. Now, I'll set that down, move the epoxy out of the way so we don't mess anything up. I'm going to take some Q-tips, spray some rubbing alcohol onto them. And now we're just going to work on the leftover on the sides. Okay. And one thing to keep in mind, as you're pulling the Q-tip, be rolling it as well. Rolling it into the direction you're moving, so it's picking up and pulling the epoxy up and out of the way. That's really key. If you're just dragging it, you're just moving the epoxy. you want to roll the Q-tip to help pull and lift it off of the surface. That'll really help you keep things clean. Okay. Let me do the upper portion of the launch lug, and then I'm gonna see how I'm rotating the Q-tip as I go. Perfect. Now I'll get a new Q-tip and turn the rocket around so I can get the other two sides. So let me spray this one. Okay. All right. Okay, very nice. Now we'll peel the tape off. And typically when you do that, yeah, there's a little residual around the corners, so it's good to get one last Q-tip to kind of dress up the corners. And by taking the time to clean this up, when you prime it, you'll see the benefits right away, because if you leave little excess glue sitting around, when you hit the primer on it, those are going to show up, and then you're going to have to sand that down. And sanding epoxy is not the most fun thing to do in the world. So if you can get it cleaned up initially, that'll make sanding down the road a lot easier. Okay, so that is done. Here, let me hold it up. Hopefully it's in focus. But the fillets are now on the launch lug. I'm going to leave that to dry. And literally we're at the point where it's time to start priming and the painting. So we are moving right along here. Okay, the building is complete. The fillets are all dry from the epoxy that we laid down around the launch lug. You can see the epoxy around the engine hook. Now I'm not quite sure how that's going to turn out yet once we hit it with the primer. Once I do, then I'll have a better idea of what needs to be filled in, and maybe put some putty or some filler to kind of smooth things out a little bit. But I'll play that by ear. But the next step is going to be laying down the first coat of primer. I'm going to tape off the very back end of the engine hook, but I'm going to leave the rest of it exposed so it'll be painted like the rest of the rocket will. I'm not going to film the painting, but I am going to show maybe a photograph of each color. My first step is going to be the gray primer. Then I'm going to look at the spirals to see if I need to do any filling, any other work, like I said, around the engine hook. And then my next coat will be white primer. And then that'll be the coat that we actually will wet sand and get ready for paint. Now, unlike the last Yankee, this one is going to get a base coat of gloss white paint. And the reason is because I'm going to mask off where the white decals are going to go. But instead of putting down decals, we're just going to remove the masking, and then the white image will show after the color is applied over that. So like I said, gray primer, white gloss coat, decal, masking decal, red base, blue upper, remove the maskings, and we should be good to go. So like I said, I'm going to take pictures of each stage and kind of give you a little progress report as we go. Okay, I've zoomed in pretty tight on this step because I want to show in detail how I prepare my nose cones for possibly future use of altimeters. The popular FS or Flight Sketch Mini altimeter does fit in BT-20 rockets, but it's best to put the altimeter up in the nose cone. That way it doesn't obstruct the ejection of the parachute at all. So what I do to get around that is, because BT-20 nose cones have this insert plug at the end, so I simply modify it so you can slide a altimeter up in there. The way I do it is I snip off the eye hook first with a pair of wire cutters. Okay, and it doesn't really matter which side you choose, but you're going to end up just choosing one side from that cutout. And what I do is I take a Dremel with a cutoff wheel, and I'll simply, let me set this down to support it. I'm going to cut right up against the edge of that square that's in the middle. I have to do this by hand. Okay. Yeah, I was just running at a low speed there, but this plastic cuts really quick with the cutoff wheel. Yeah, so once you get it cut through, you can kind of peel off the shavings and the leftover scrap. And then you can take an X-Acto knife and just sort of clean up the edges a little bit. Like so. Okay. Now the next step is to drill two 16th inch holes in the flattest part of that piece right there. That way we can run a loop of Kevlar to make a tether to attach the shock cord, the altimeter, the parachute, anything we need to can attach to that point there. So I just take a drill bit, a drill with 16th inch hole. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start two little pilot holes to make it easier for me. That way the drill bit doesn't wander on me. It's being finicky today. Okay. Right there. Okay. And then do the other one. Like I said, this plastic is so soft that the tools kind of go through it like a hot knife through butter. Okay. There we go. So now this will glue right into the nose cone, and all the exposed open area that we've removed will be plenty of room for a smaller, like I said, a Flight Sketch Mini, or maybe even Firefly. Those types of altimeters can fit into the nose cone on BT-20s. So just doing this while we wait for the primer to dry, and we'll come back to show off the progress on the paint job. Okay, as you can see, the base coat of the gloss white is done. I've got two coats of the white on top of the primer, and everything so far is going well. Now it's time to apply the decals to the, well, I shouldn't say decals, they're actually maskings. We're going to apply the maskings to the base coat, paint our red, and then paint our blue, and then we can peel the maskings off, and we'll have a white decal look to it. The first thing I want to do is the stars on the fins. Now, I'm showing you this side because they're bare. I still need to finish these, but I want to show you what I've done up to this point. Based on the face card and doing some measurements, the stars need to be up against that line, which is 26 millimeters from the base to the stripe, with one point facing down. And you'll see better what I mean when we get to it, but I went ahead and marked the 26 millimeter mark on four of the sides so far. I got to do 5 and 6, and then we are ready to go. So let me go ahead and grab a couple strips and show you how I do it. Just take a ruler, measure your 26 millimeters, and lay the tape down right there. Okay, one more. And this is, it doesn't have to be an exact science, it's just a general idea of where it needs to be. We'll make sure it's straight when we actually apply the masking. Okay, let me get this at 26. There we go. Okay. So now we want to take our stars, and we're going to do these as individuals, obviously. Grab a pair of scissors, and I'm going to just cut one star off at a time, like so. And I'll show you how I do the first one, and then I'll go ahead and do the rest off camera, but this will give you an idea of what I'm doing. You want to make sure that the decal sticks to the upper part, like so. Actually, the best thing and easiest thing would be to grab a pair of tweezers to make this process a little bit easier. Okay. So, let's see if I can do this where the camera can see. I'm going to put the two corners of the star up to that stripe. Just like so. Go ahead and press that down. And then we can take their striping off, as well as that backing paper that was on the decal. Let's use my fingernail for this one. And there we have a perfectly applied star decal mask. Again, once this is all sprayed red, I can peel that off, and then we'll have a white star. The other option was to actually just use these as decals and lay them over the paint. The reason I wanted to avoid that was just because it prevents them from ever peeling off or actually creating a little ridge, because vinyl does leave a little ridge to it. It's not as thin as like water slide decal, for example. So I thought, well, we'll just make it more permanent by using it as a mask to use the white paint to give that effect. So I'm going to do the other 5 sides off camera, and then I'm going to come back and do the stripe in the center. Okay, I know it's hard for the camera to pick it up because it's white on white, but I've got a star mask on every fin on the Yankee. I don't know, maybe if I rotate it, the light might hit it just right and you can see it, but you got to trust me and take me at my word. There's a decal on every fin. So the next thing we want to do is apply the stars and stripes decal, which is applied directly above the launch lug and basically the center of the body tube, more or less. Now, the key to laying down maskings like this is you don't want to rip the whole thing off and wrap it and hope it's straight. The key is you only cut the backing off of maybe the first 1/8 of an inch, so you can lay it down and it'll hold its position. That way you can wrap it, and once you get everything straight, then slowly remove the backing as you rotate it under you. That'll assure that it's aligned the first go around. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just, like I said, cut the maybe 1/8 of an inch off the backing. Peel this up very delicately. The problem with this is the decal itself is actually sticking more to the under paper as opposed to that top layer. So if I can just kind of get a knife in there and help it adhere to the top part, there we go. Just like so. Now I can take some scissors and just cut, like I said, 1/8 of an inch off the backing. So now we've got a little bit of a hangover there, and that's going to be what actually adheres down to the tube initially, and then we can work on getting our alignment. So let me lay this down. I'm going to put the white just off centered with the lug. That way technically there's going to be a red stripe in front of the launch lug. But, let me lay this down. That looks straight, but now we're going to find out for sure. I'm going to rotate the decal around. Wow. Okay. Well, we pretty much nailed it. It's right centered. That's right where we want it. So let me just kind of seal that down now, since that's the right position. Very fortunate there. I hit it dead center the first try. Actually, let me lay that aside now. I think I'm going to have a struggle with each of these stars, but we'll just have to deal with those accordingly. Yeah, they're not coming up. So I have to use my knife and help pick up each individual star and attach it to the top coat. Yeah, this one's doing the same thing. I'll tell you what we can do. Since I've already aligned it and we know it's straight, I can go ahead and peel the entire blue backing off, because I'm gonna really struggle with well, let's just we're making this up as we go here, guys. Yeah, I can work with these stars here down to the ones I worked on. Now this one's getting hung up. Let me trim off the backing that I've already used up, that way it's not kind of binding up on me. There. Makes life a little bit easier. Just make sure our alignment is still good. It is. Okay. And work on this next star here. And while I'm very tediously working with these stars, let me just give a shout out to a gentleman from the Rocketry Forum that sent me these decals. From what I gather, they're from a Cricut machine that he used to create the decals and printed them up, and he sent these to me. And I'll give full credit and in the description of this video, but I do want to thank him for sending these to me. And again, this is really a good opportunity for me to do a test run to see how well this technique works as far as using them as a mask as opposed to just a decal. The intent was to use them as decals, and I know he's used these as decals, but I really want to see how these will work out as a masking. Okay. 2 more stars. We're making progress. But definitely the backing paper underneath the decal is holding a lot stronger than this upper paper. Oh, there we go. Okay. Again, it's white on white, so it's got to be hard to see, but I'm just gonna kind of keep it tight, make sure we're still straight. Boy, that's dropping in perfectly straight. Wow, you couldn't, man, that is such a good fit where the 2 stripes meet. Very little gap, if any. It's just, they're right on. Okay, so now that we got that down, I probably will go down and lay a piece of Tamiya tape across that bridge, just to prevent any seepage from any maybe red paint from getting in there. But that is perfect alignment right there. Okay, so seal those down. Now I can peel up the top backing paper. There we go. Again, probably hard to see on camera, but the decals are all down and it's ready to apply the red portion of the paint. Now, the blue stars are going to be over blue, the white stars are going to be over blue paint. So when I mask for the red, I'm going to have to mask off right at the top of that white stripe. But that'll be fine. That'll be easy enough with Tamiya tape. So, all right. Next step is we're going to do some painting. I don't know if I'm going to put my Yankee decal down now or later on. I don't want to risk damaging it, so I'm probably going to wait on the Yankee mask until we're ready for the blue paint. But yeah, that's how we do that. So I'm going to take it out to the spray booth, get some red on here, and I'll show you the final result. Okay, while we're waiting for the body tube to dry with the red paint, I thought I'd take this opportunity to go ahead and finish off the nose cone and get the insert glued in. I painted this blue several days ago, so it's more than cured by now. So we can go ahead and remove it from the dowel that I use and see how good our masking held up. Set that out of the way. It's always kind of fun to do a reveal on a new paint job and see how crisp our lines came out. I do use the blue tape as kind of an overflow, but not for precise masking, just to kind of cover up everything else. But I use the Tamiya tape for the primary masking because you get a really good fine line with it. So let me reveal the final job here. Look at that crisp line. Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. So now the next step is to glue this insert in that we made earlier. If you remember, I cut it so we'd allow room for the Flight Sketch mini altimeter to fit up into the nose cone there. And this is a very straightforward process. It's just a matter of taking some plastic cement. I use the Testors gel cement, and just go ahead and run a little bead on the inside. Like so. Then take your insert and set it in there, and I kind of like to twist it around a little bit to kind of spread the glue, but we don't want to overdo it. And then yeah, just let that sit and dry. And what the cement does is it actually melts the plastic on both parts, and then when it solidifies, they'll fuse and bond as one part. So that's the really cool thing about plastic cement, is it's not really, you're not really gluing two parts together, you're bonding them to become one part. So anyway, pretty cool little process, straightforward. So I'm going to let that sit for a while, and this is ready for the clear coat actually now, but I'm going to wait until the main body tube is ready. That way I can clear everything all at once. But yeah, there we go. Nose cone is finished. Okay, it's been about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes or so since we painted the red on, and it's hard but not cured obviously, but it's hard enough where I want to peel the decals off before it becomes too brittle and it'll crack the paint when I do. So I figured now's a good time to do it. So you can see, I don't know if you can see, but I can see the outline of the decals fairly well. So it shouldn't be too difficult for me to lift the corners, and that's my goal, is to lift a corner and then with a pair of tweezers peel the rest off. So let's see if we can get this first one up here. All right. As they say, I likey. That looks pretty good. So now that I know it's a good time to do it, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the rest here. And I'll fast forward through this to make it easier on you guys. Okay, that last one, it looks like I dug in a little too deep with the knife. I actually took the white paint off and you can see the gray primer, so I'm gonna have to touch that up just a little bit. But overall, I'm pleased with that technique. Again, using vinyl decals as a mask. All right, and now I wanna do the stripes up here in midway. And I'm not gonna touch the stars because remember, those are gonna get covered up in blue eventually. But let's go ahead and get these stripes up and see how the center stripe looks. I'm just taking my time. I'm in absolutely no rush. Let me just snip that little piece off. What makes this tricky is the curvature to it, so I can't just peel it all off at once. Kind of have to do it piece by piece. But wow, I'm very, very impressed with this technique. And in the future, I'll never have to worry about decals coming off or anything because I don't have any decals. This is all just paint. Every bit of it. And again, this is waiting about an hour and a half after I painted. So if you're curious about a timeline as to how long do you let it sit, that's how long I let it sit. So if you do it too early, it's going to be too wet and it's going to run. If you wait too long, it's going to be hard and brittle and then it's going to crack and peel the paint. More paint than you want off. So it's a delicate balance you got to find, but this is an hour and a half with Rust-Oleum paint. I take that back. This is Krylon red. So, and this is our last stripe here. voila, there we have it. So I really could not be more pleased with that. That came out really, really sharp. And yeah, so what I'll do is, for the blue, I'm going to mask just below this row of stars here. I'm not sure if you can see them, but there's a row of stars above the red stripes. I'm going to mask between them and the red, and cover the bottom, paint the whole blue, peel the stars up. I'll lay down the Yankee decal before I do the painting, obviously. But no, I'm really impressed with that technique, so good deal. All right, moving on to the blue. And I'm going to put the Yankee decal down on my own, and I'll just come back and we'll peel the stars off when I'm done with the blue. Okay, I didn't show the filming of the blue paint only because you saw how I did the red, so I didn't feel the need to take all the equipment out to the painting booth. But same process, I masked off the lower portion. I did lay down the Yankee decals, and I've also got the strip of the white stars right around that perimeter there that we're going to reveal here in a second. So really the only thing now to do is remove the decals. The rocket was painted between an hour and a half to 2 hours ago, and so the paint is now hard. You don't want to squeeze it because you could still leave fingerprints, but it's the right time to remove the decals. I do want to lay down a piece of wax paper just in case. I don't want it to stick to anything and peel the blue paint off. The first thing we can do is remove this yellow tape that I used to protect the upper stripe above the red stripe. So let me remove this. Look at that fine line. Got a little bit of seepage there. That's okay, we can clean that up easy enough. But I tell you, it is really hard to beat, to me, a tape when it comes down to laying down fine lines. Just about got it. There we go. Yeah, right at the initial scene, there's a little bit of a, not sure if the camera's picking that up or not, but I'll clean that up easy enough. But yeah, nice crisp line. Now the same process as before with the stripes on the fins. I'm going to very carefully pick up a corner of each star and then use my tweezers to peel up the remainder. There we go, that was pretty easy. There we go, look at that. Very nice. Okay. Okay, so we got the stars done. There was a little bit of a couple corners where the paint came up under the white, and you can see the gray primer, but just like on the red, I can patch that up easy enough with a little bit of white touch-up paint. But overall, I'm very pleased. Looks very good. Now I'm excited to see what our Yankee looks like, the name. Let me see. Best place, probably on the bottom of this Y here. I don't know why this is being harder than the stars. There we go. Okay, this will reveal pretty much what we're going to get for the remainder of this decal set. Very nice. This is gonna look good. Okay. Okay, there we have it. The painting and decaling is all done. I really like how that came out, and since this will be our flying model, once I get this clear coated, I won't have any fear of decals peeling off or, you know, chipping or breaking off, you know, in landings and stuff. They're permanent because it's all paint. So again, I'm going to go up with the X-Acto and kind of clean up some of the edges that had a little bit of bleed through. Fix some of the white spots with some white touch-up paint, but overall I'm really pleased with the way this came out. So awesome. Let me get ready to put some clear coat on and we'll come back and do that. Okay, now that all the paint is dried and cured, it's been sitting for a few days since the last segment was filmed, because I don't want to put clear on uncured paint. So it's had plenty of time to cure now. It's ready to go. I've got my Pledge floor polish ready to go here. First thing I'm going to do is the nose cone, and this is pretty simple. Let me set the body aside, and what I like to do is just pour a little bit of my Future into a little plastic cup, and it doesn't take much at all. In fact, that's probably even too much as it is, but that's okay because we can recycle it later. But I use a 1-inch foam brush. Dip it in and just make some smooth passes. A nice wet coat, give it that nice glossy sheen that we're looking for. And a lot of this, for one, the clear protects the paint, obviously, but in the environment that I fly in that rocky, hard surface, this definitely protects the paint from chipping. I'd rather chip the clear coat as opposed to the actual paint. I mean, inevitably, you're going to get a little paint loss as well, but I've noticed that the Future is pretty durable. So, okay, don't forget the very tip. Okay, now I like to hang this inverted when it's drying. That way I don't get any buildups on the bottom from, you know, as it settles. So I hang it vertically like this, and what I'll do is I'll just take my little paintbrush handle and run it through the tether there and just let it hang like that. I'm going to go set that aside elsewhere to dry. And then we can get right onto the fuselage or the rocket body itself. Now in this instance, you definitely want to have something down below to catch the over drip because it's going to flow down. And so I've got some wax paper plus some paper towel to help absorb any dripping clear. But same as before, just kind of dip my brush in. I'm going to start on the face where the name is, so I'll know where to stop. Kind of gives me a good starting point. And you know what I'm going to do actually? To give me something to hold on to, I'm going to use a yellow stand to give me something to hold on to. That way I'm not going to put fingerprints on the body. And then just draw the brush down. And I'm going to do the fins separately, so I'm just going to do the body for now. And one thing that's nice about using a foam brush is when you get to obstacles like the launch lug, for example, the foam will kind of conform to that obstacle and just help flow right around it there. Just like so. Okay, now that we got the body done, now I'm just going to attack each of the fins. Like so. Don't forget the leading edge, the trailing edge, and the tip. Okay, so that's one side. Two sides. And this will be our third side. And that should do it. Okay, now we want to stand this up vertically so we get the flow going down so we don't get any buildups on the side of the bracket or anything like that. So that's all there is to it. I'm going to let this dry and we'll come back and do a final closeout because I'm going to still have to attach the nose cone to the shock cord. So I'm going to get some rubber elastic cord and get that ready to show you, and then we'll do a final wrap up. Okay, so here we are at the launch pad. The rocket was just clear coated last night. I let it sit overnight. It's dry as a bone now, and it's almost too pretty to fly, to be honest with you. I'm a little nervous about dinging it up, but hey, that's what they're made to do. So this is the conclusion of my Yankee #2 build with the retro style, and I want to thank the gentleman from Rocket Forums who last time I reached out to him was hard to get hold of, so maybe he's trying to remain anonymous, so I'll omit his name for his own privacy. But I want to thank him personally for these decals. Using them as masking worked out beautifully, and I'm really anxious to see if it flies as good as it looks, and if it flies half as good as it looks, I'm going to be more than impressed. So thank you again for watching. Enjoy the entire build series. Not sure what's on the plate next. I know I've got some Alpha 3s I want to build. Maybe even a vintage Wizard like I did before, but it'll be flyable like this Yankee. So anyway, thanks again for watching this series. I appreciate your support of the channel, and yeah, look forward to the next one coming up.